This book examines whether technological advancements can bridge or widen existing disparities in healthcare for older adults. Using cross-regional perspectives, empirical case studies, and policy analysis from South Asia, the Middle East, and other comparable contexts, it discusses practical solutions for inclusive technology adoptions, ethical concerns, and community driven models offering actionable insights for policymakers, researchers, healthcare providers, technology developers working towards equitable and sustainable elderly care. It is an essential volume for academics and researchers in sociology, public policy, Middle Eastern and South Asian studies, as well as policymakers, healthcare professionals, and technology developers interested in exploring technological innovations, policy frameworks, and practical pathways for the digital transformation of aging in the global South. I would like to take this moment to acknowledge and thank my esteemed co-editors, contributors, and the publisher of their invaluable support in bringing this work to fruitions. And now I invite for all to witness the official inauguration of the book through a short video presentation.
With that, it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce our esteemed keynote speaker, Dr. Fulya Şenay Avcı. Dr. Avcı is a distinguished professor and postdoctoral fellow at Muschert University, Turkey, whose work lies at intersection of digital aging, sociology, and the lived experience of older adults. Her research critically examines themes such as social isolation, loneliness, and the impact of digital technologies on aging populations, contributing significantly to contemporary debates in the gerontology and sociology. With a strong academic presence and active engagement in international research platform, she brings a nuanced and human-centered perspective to understanding how technological transformation influence care, relationships, and social inclusion in later life. Today, she will be delivering a keynote address on digital aging and intersection between technology and social life, social isolation, and loneliness among older adults. We are truly privileged to have her with us today. Ma'am, we extend a very warm welcome to you.
Professor Fulya, welcome. to the program and kindly unmute yourself. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Sorry. Okay, I'm start.
Yes, doctor, please start.
Okay. Hello, I'm Dr. Fulya Şenay Avcı. I completed my doctorate in sociology at Mersin University. My work focuses on aging, sociology of aging, gerontology, and digital sociology. I am very happy to be at this symposium where very important topics will be discussed. I will be giving the opening speech to you all. Distinguished colleagues, esteemed researchers, healthcare professionals, and dear participants, it is both a great honor and a significant intellectual responsibility for me to address you today within the framework of this important symposium. This platform brings together three of the most critical domains of our time: digital aging, cancer care, and psychosocial well-being within the perspective of sustainable development. In fact, we are not merely discussions, parallel developments. Rather, we find ourselves at the very centers of a multi-layered transformation that reshapes human existence itself. This transformation is reconfiguring aging, illness, care practice, and social life, not only within biological or institutional boundaries, but increasingly within digital infrastructures, data systems, and technological environments. For centuries, aging has predominantly been understood as a biological and chronological process. However, this perspective is no longer sufficient in today's context. Aging has evolved into a multidimensional phenomenon shaped by social, cultural, and technological context, extending far beyond merely physical change. Aging is now not only a biological process, but also a social constructed experience, a technologically mediated condition, and increasingly a phenomenon defined, measured, and governed by data. This transformation shifting aging from being in an individual process to become an integral part of digital system and the data economy. Today, older individuals are not only present in physical space, they are also represented on digital platforms, continuously monitored through health technology, and classified and evaluated by algorithmic systems. This indicates that aging is no longer merely something that is experienced, but also something that is calculated, analyzed, and managed. At this point, a fundamental question arises. What does it mean to age in a digital world? Does aging become more visible through data? Or does it, on the contrary, became more invisible as a subjective experience, emotions, and life stories are reduced within data set? In other words, is aging now better understood, or is not became a process that is more measured yet less felt? These questions invite us us to critically reflect not only on the possibility of technology, but also on how it redefined the very meaning of aging. Digital health technology are creating transformative change and healthcare service. Telemedicine, enhanced access. Artificial intelligence supported systems accelerate diagnosis, remote monitoring, and continuity of care. However, there is a critical point here. Healthcare is not merely a technical process. It's also a profoundly human encounter. This encounter is grounded in effective interaction and mutual recognition. Therefore, care should be understood not only as a process that can be technology optimized, but as an inherently ethical and relation practice. In this context, we must ask, to what extent can digital systems address the emotional and relational dimension of care? Or is care gradually transforming into a structure that is more efficient yet less human? Digitalization is often presented through a discourse of inclusivity. However, this does not always reflect the reality, because digital systems include some individuals while excluding others. This exclusion manifests in lack of digital literacy, economic constraints, technological alienation, privacy concerns. Thus, we encounter a striking paradox. Technologies designed to connect people might simultaneously produce new forms of loneliness. One of the most striking contradictions of contemporary society is this: we have never been more connected, yet we have never been more alone. Social isolation and loneliness are not merely individual problems, they are also structural and social phenomena. Digital communication tools create connections, but not every connections generate a sense of belonging. A network is not always a community. Communication is not always a relationships. Psychosocial well-being depends not on quantity, but on the quality of relationships. Care practices are also undergoing a profound transformation. Traditional, grounded in human relationships, care is now delivered toward platforms, guided by algorithmics, supported by technological systems. At this point, critical questions arise. What do we lose when care becomes digitalized? How are empathy, touch, and emotional connection transformed? The core issue is this: does technology replace care, or does it strengthen it? This debate points not merely to the technical organization of care, but to how its ethical, relational, and affective dimensions are being reconstituted. In this sense, digitalization should be understood as a structural inversion that reshapes the meaning and boundaries of care practice. Perhaps the most important emphasis of this symposium is sustainable development, and this concept is of critical importance because sustainable is not only economic, it's also social, ethical, and profoundly human. A truly sustainable healthcare system must be accessible, inclusive, equitable. Otherwise, Digital transformation carries a significant risk. Technological progress may occur without social justice. We must now shift our perspective. The question is not how do we adapt older individuals to technology? The real question is how do we adapt technology to the release of agings? This requires interdisciplinary collaboration, sociological analysis, ethical sensitivity, policy development. The ultimate goal is to build systems that place human dignity at the center. Today, we are witnessing a profound transformation and as actors shaping its direction. We stand at a critical historical moment. Digital technologies undoubtedly have the potential to reshape the experience of aging. They can expand access to health care, enhance care process, improve quality of life for older adults. However, they also carry risk, deepening existing inequalities, weakening social bonds, and overshadowing the human dimension of care. Therefore, this transformation must be understood not only as a technological shift, but also as a test of our values. The key issue is not how advanced our technology became, but under what ethical frameworks, with what social responsibility, and for whose benefit they are used. Our task is not only to innovate, we are also responsible for questioning, thinking critically, and reimagining a more just future. Because the future of aging will not be determined technology alone. It will be shaped by the decision we make today, the system we build, and the values we uphold. And perhaps the most important question is this: in a rapidly advancing technological world, how do we preserve the meaning of being human? The answer to these questions will shape not only the future of older adults, but the future of all of us. Therefore, digitalization should not be seen merely as a story of progress, but as a field of ethical, social, and human responsibility. And finally, we must never forget, no matter how advanced technology becomes, human needs remain the same. Human beings still seek to be seen, to be understood, to belong. And ultimately, human beings still aspire to life, dignified, meaningful, and relationally rich lives. If digital transformation supports these needs, then we are truly progressing. But if it weakens them, then we must pause and rethink. I sincerely hope that today's discussions will not remain only as academic knowledge, but will transform in concrete steps for a more just, inclusive, and human future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, ma'am. It was a very insightful piece of information. It is with great pleasure I introduce our esteemed guest of honor, Professor Dr. Soumaya Abdellatifi. Dr. Latif is a distinguished sociologist and academic leader, currently serving as the head of the Sociology Department and Director of Humanities and Social Sciences Research Center at Ajman University. Her work spans in critical areas such as family studies, gender, digital society, and social policy, reflecting a strong commitment to addressing contemporary societal challenges through research and innovation. She has played a pivotal role in advancing interdisciplinary research initiatives and fostering global academic collaboration. As a scholar and research coordinator, her contributions extend to qualitative analysis, research leadership, and academic publishing, including her involvement as a guest editor in internationally indexed journals. Her work consistently emphasizes the importance of reimagining care, strengthening social system, and integrating technology with human-centered approaches, making her insights especially relevant today in today's symposium's theme. We are truly honored to have her with us today to share her thoughts on reimagining care in digital age. Ma'am, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, distinguished scholars, and esteemed participants, it's a great honor to join you today in this important symposium. And I would like to warmly thank Dr. Shiba Khalid for her kind invitation and for bringing together such a timely and meaningful initiative. Building on some of the points highlighted by my colleague, Dr. Fulya, let me begin with a simple but perhaps unsettling question. What if the future of care is efficient but no longer truly human? Today, an older patient can be monitored remotely, receive automated recommendations, and interact with healthcare systems without ever encountering a human presence. We call this progress, and in many ways it is. But sociologically, it invites a deeper reflection. Are we improving care or transforming its very nature? Because care is not only about treatment, it is about recognition, dignity, and the feeling of not being alone. And this is precisely the tension I would like to reflect on today. Let me take a step back and situate the discussion more broadly. We are living through a profound transformation. Aging is no longer simply a biological process. It is increasingly shaped by digital infrastructures, institutional frameworks, and evolving social expectations. At the same time, care, particularly in contexts such as cancer, is being redefined through technological mediation. From a sociological perspective, this invites us to focus on one central issue, the transformation of care itself. Traditionally, care has been rooted in proximity, family ties, human presence, and emotional connection. Today, however, digital technologies, telemedicine, online platforms, and remote monitoring are progressively reshaping how care is delivered. On one hand, these innovations bring undeniable benefits, but on the other hand, they raise a fundamental question. Are we improving care, as I said, or are we living a transformation of the core, the ontology of care? Because care is not only about services, it's a social relationship. And in this regard, I would like to refer to the work of Pascal Intermeyer, who was one of my professors at Strasbourg University. Pascal Intermeyer, whose work has meaningfully contributed to the sociology of aging, death, and the end-of-life issues, including ethical questions surrounding euthanasia, and whose research offers a deeply insightful perspective. Pascal Intermeyer recounts a personal experience with his own mother at the end of her life. She had lost her cognitive ability to recognize people, even her own son. And yet, each time he visited her, her physiological condition improved. Her body responded. Her heart rhythm was stable, more stable, and her overall state became calmer. So, how can we interpret this? His conclusion is profound. What matters is not only identity, who the person is for someone else. What matters is the relationship itself, the emotional bond that exists beyond recognition and cognition. In other words, what sustains the individual is not recognition through the mind, but connection through relation presence. And as sociologists, we know this well, that the human being is fundamentally a relational being. This brings me to another dimension, more anthropological. As David Le Breton wrote a lot about the sociology of the body in the French sociological school. For David Le Breton, the body is not merely biological, it is also socially constructed and culturally perceived. In many contexts, the aging body, and even more the diseased body, can become an object of discomfort, avoidance, or even repulsion. Unlike the body of a child, which invites closeness and affection, the aging body may instead provoke distance. Now, when we add to this the symbolic weight of illness, particularly cancer, the situation becomes even more complex. In some countries of the Maghreb, cancer has long been perceived not only as a disease, but as a deeply feared and socially charged condition surrounded by strong forms of collective superstition. It is not merely that the illness is feared, it is that even naming it can be perceived as dangerous in some contexts. The mere mention of the word cancer is believed to carry a form of symbolic contamination, as if speaking about the disease could, in itself, expose one to it. For this reason, it has often been referred to as a nameless disease, avoided in everyday language or accompanied by protective expressions. Now, although today, with greater awareness, medical progress, and the wider prevalence of the disease, these representations have begun to be partially demystified. They have not entirely disappeared. Cancer continues to be experienced not only as an individual condition, but as a family drama, and more broadly as a deeply disruptive social event. If we bring these elements together, a paradox clearly emerges. On one hand, digital technologies may protect patients from negative social reactions, from discomfort, from fear, or even rejection. But on the other hand, they may also reinforce a more subtle form of exclusion. Because when human interaction is reduced, the individual may begin to feel not protected by, but displaced, not supported, but socially distant. In this sense, the elderly patient, already vulnerable, may internalize a feeling of being unwanted, excessive, or marginal within their own relational world. At this point, it is important to consider the broader social context. In many Arab societies, including the United Arab Emirates, care remains deeply rooted in family structures and intergenerational solidarity. This provides a strong social foundation. However, a digital health system expands rapidly. A critical question arises: How can we integrate technological innovation without weakening the social bonds that are central to care? Allow me to conclude with a final reflection. The future of aging in the digital era will not be determined by technology alone, but by the choices we make, the values we embed in our systems, the meanings we give to care, and the place we preserve for human relationships. A society where longevity does not mean isolation, where illness does not become exclusion, and where care remains, above all, a human connection. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. It was a highly insightful discussion. Moving ahead, it is my privilege to introduce our guest of honor, Professor Dr. Rajesh Mishra. Professor Mishra is a distinguished sociologist of immense academic stature, formerly serving as professor and head of the Department of Sociology and director of the JK Institute of Sociology and Human Relations at the University of Lucknow. With an illustrious academic career spanning over 5 decades, his scholarship has significantly shaped the understanding of Indian middle class, social change, and social movements. His works reflect a deep engagement with evolving dynamics of society, and in recent years, he has contributed to emerging perspectives through a lens of planetary sociology, examining global crises and their intersection with social structures. As an exceptional teacher and mentor, Professor Mishra has supervised 36 PhDs and more than 100 MPhil dissertations, nurturing generations of sociologists and fostering a strong culture of critical inquiry and academic excellence. His academic journey includes teaching and academic engagements across India and at global sphere, including prestigious institutions such as Munich, Cambridge, the London School of Economics, Sofia, and Yokohama, reflecting his global academic presence. Even after his superannuation, he continues to actively contribute as an independent scholar, engaging in lectures, seminars, and intellectual discourse, inspiring scholars across generations. We are truly honored to have such an eminent figure in Indian sociology amongst us today. So we extend our heartfelt welcome to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you so
Welcome,
much.
Professor. Welcome, Professor Mishra.
Yeah,
And thank you
you
so much for joining us because it's very early morning in the Britain and sorry to
It's
disturb
okay.
you
It's
at
no
this
problem.
time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. Though I've just gone through, just listened to two experts in the field, and I think that I've been a student of inequalities and social change. So I would like to reflect on uh, uh, the relationship between inequalities in digital health and digital citizenship in the later life. Uh, in fact, the whole theme can be put in a question form. And the question form can be who belongs in the digital future, and what about inequalities in health and citizenship in later life? That is a question for me, maybe because I belong to that kind of generation. I myself consider also uh, that kind of aging citizen. Maybe that is the reason. So let us begin with the digital technologies. Whenever we talk about digital technologies today, with regard to cancer care specifically, we often have uh, some better ideas. Uh, we think of ethically designed and equitably deployed, and that can transform aging and cancer care into ecosystem of dignity, continuity, and psychological resilience. And perhaps, therefore, we advance as a consequence the consequence. Am I audible? Okay, thank you.
So please.
Advancing Sustainable Development Goals. Out of 17 SDGs, what usually called Sustainable Development Goals, perhaps the emphasis of this symposium is on three developmental goals, three sustainable developmental goals. One is what the SDGs free, good health and well-being. The second can be SDG 10, reduce inequalities. And here in the field of cancer care specifically. And the 11 SDGs can be sustainable communities. So, in fact, I have specifically mentioned this triad because this triad becomes important in the times of rapid demographic changes, rising cancer incidences world over, and particularly in our society, in India, and consequently widespread psychological distress, as mentioned by my two earlier speakers, expert speakers. This has created a new social issue before us. And perhaps that's why the symposium. I understand this is a very pertinent problem, and I commend the organizers for the symposium. Let us accept the fact that nowadays digital tools from telemedicine to AI-enabled diagnostics are no longer optional. They have become indispensable, particularly in the modern times. And I also suppose that aging refers to use of digital technologies to support older adults, particularly in health, autonomy, social participation, and therefore the idea of digital aging, cancer care, and psychological well-being converge as a single aspiration. That is to create societies where people can live longer, suffer less, and remain connected to meaning, dignity, and community. But as I mentioned earlier, that as a student of social inequalities, I'm of the opinion that digital ecosystems can also deepen inequalities. I underline this. In getting instruments of sustainable human care, particularly in a society like ours, where not only social inequalities are paramount, but also economic and income inequalities are sharp, and perhaps even tremendous, more paramount. Therefore, today, I would like to reflect on two intertwined questions. Who benefits from digital health? And who is recognized as a full digital citizen in later life? I underline this idea of digital citizen in later life. These questions are not technical questions. They're deeply sociological, as mentioned by my two expert speakers just before me. And they have manifold sociological dimensions. But I would highlight inequality dimension, and others, they have highlighted other dimensions. And that is about unequal distribution of power, access, care, dignity as well, and belonging. That is the main point I would like to harp. Though we often speak digital revolution as if we are rising tide lifting old boats, but tides do not lift boats equally. We will have to admit some struggles. Some boats struggle. Some are left stranded on the shore. And in this context, there is a need to explore two interlinked sociological themes, I feel. First, we must focus on inequalities in digital health. Who benefits? Who is left behind? That is a very important question for me. And second is digital health in later life, what we call aging. And in later life, what about rights of aged people? Have they the agency? They participate. For example, three issues: rights, agency, and participation. I think together they reveal not only challenges of our digital era, but also possibilities for building more humane, inclusive, and sustainable future. I'll just take a little more time, and I will focus on two. First, inequalities in digital health. I understand that digital health is expanding rapidly. As I mentioned, telemedicine, AI diagnostics, sensors of all kinds, mental health apparatus or apps even, genomic platforms, so on and so forth. But access to these innovations is deeply uneven, especially in our society. Wherever most of our population, after every effort of the state, rather not withstanding every effort of the state and government, nearly 70% of us, I'm talking of Indian society and other poor society as well, don't have access to medical care, and particularly elderly people, poor people, and rural people in our society. And mind it, we are predominantly rural society. Still more than 60% or around 60% people live in rural areas. And whenever there any problem occurs in urban areas, people start moving towards the rural areas. So therefore, it is a central sociological question for me. That is, does digital health democratize care, or does it deepen existing inequalities? That is an important sociological question for me. Digital health is not simply a technological system, therefore. It is a social institution shaped by power, design, markets, and public policies. No doubt that digital health promises care, remote consultations, I mentioned diagnosis of all kinds. But the people who need digital health the most are often the ones who have the least access to it. That is the main point. And therefore, I think the class, income, and the cost of participation are important issues to ponder over. To participate in digital health, one needs devices, data, literacy, and confidence. There's hardly any doubt about it. For many older adults, there are not givens, rather there are many incapacities. Incapacities are much more. experts have observed that digital health becomes a new forms of social life. Those with resources move ahead, and those without resources fall further behind. And that is how this kind of digital aging may create inequalities. However, we often assume older adults cannot use technology. I mean, people like us feel in daily life. But the real issue is that technology is rarely designed with them in mind, with people like us in mind. For example, we use small phones, complex menus, digital menus, complicated consultations processes. As a matter of fact, these are not barriers of ability, rather they are barriers of design. I would like to harp. The digital world is built for the younger generation, and not for the aging bodies, or we even, I doubt for, they are built for anxious caregivers. We should also give some attention to gender and rural inequalities as tremendous gender rural based discrimination prevail in our society. Women, especially older and rural women, are excluded from attention of caregiving itself. What to talk about digital aging? They are generally not capable of navigating digital portals for appointments or medication and reports without any support. Rural areas, I think, need special attention where connectivity is fragile. Digital health becomes a distant dream. There is another aspect too. I'll focus on that aspect, then I would stop. And that is the emotional cost. Digital exclusion is not only a technical problem, it is an emotional one also. It may produce anxiety, quite sense of being left behind, and sometimes shame as well, that we are unable to do it. For cancer patients and their caregivers, this emotional burden becomes part of illness itself sometimes. Now, let us shift lens. Older adults are not simply users of digital systems. They are citizens, bearers of rights, agents of choice, participant in public life. Therefore, digital citizenship is the right to belong in a digital society, in a digitalizing society, I would say. So there should be some emphasis on the right to access, because I think that access is not a luxury. It is a foundation of digital citizenship. Affordable devices, universal broadband, age-friendly designs, and not so much technical upgrades that they become incomprehensible. Okay? And these are democratic necessities. And moreover, in our kind of society, I would also emphasize right to literacy and education. Digital literacy itself is very important, and we lag behind in in literacy and education. And above it, there is digital literacy. Digital literacy is not about mastering technology. It is about mastering one's own life as well. That aspect should be emphasized, I think. So people would able to have confidence to say that I navigate my health, I can participate, I can decide. And in that reference, intergenerational learning, community training, and patient-friendly interfaces are very important, and they can transform our agencies. So, in conclusion, I would like to state, rather, I would like to state that let me end with a simple thought. A society is judged not by how fast its technology advances, but by how deeply its people are included in it. If digital health becomes a new frontier of inequality, we will fail. But if digital citizenship becomes a shared right, if older adults can access, learn, participate, and flourish, then technology becomes something more than innovation. It becomes a social achievement, a step towards sustainable development rooted in dignity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was an extremely insightful and enriching session. Now, it is my great honor to introduce our esteemed chief guest, Professor Dr. Glenn Muschert. Dr. Muschert is a distinguished professor of digital sociology and associate chair for graduate studies in Department of Public Health at Khalifa University, Abu Dhabi, UAE. With a with a rich and diverse academic career, he has previously served as a faculty member at Miami University, Purdue University in United States, and as a visiting scholar at Erzincan University, Ataturk University, reflecting his strong international and academic engagement. Beyond academia, Dr. Muschert has also contributed as an advisor to the Abu Dhabi government and medtech startup companies, bridging the gap between research, policy, and innovation. His research focuses on human dimensions of digital technology, sustainable development goals, and resolution of complex social problems, making his work highly relevant in today's rapidly transforming global landscape. An accomplished scholar, he has authored and edited numerous books, peer-reviewed articles, and academic chapters across fields such as sociology, media studies, entrepreneurship, and social sustainable development goal, contributing significantly to interdisciplinary knowledge production. We are truly privileged to have such a globally respected academic and thought leader among us. Sir, we extend a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, please.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, and good morning, almost afternoon in India, but still morning. Good morning to everyone. It's really my pleasure and honor to be here today, and to be named chief guest is humbling. I follow Dr. Avcı and Dr. Abdellatif and Professor Mishra. This is really, I hardly feel I have anything new to say. Please excuse me if some of what I'm saying is already mentioned by my colleagues before me. I sincerely thank Dr. Shiba Khalid, and the organizing committee, and everyone who helps make this event possible. When things go seamlessly in the front stage, it means that there has been a lot going on in the backstage, and the coordination and the conversations and some of the technical management is extremely well done when things just move smoothly. So it's a pleasure to join you today and to have this group of scholars and researchers. And I think that it's really refreshing to be among those who take the intersections of aging and technology and well-being seriously. These aren't just like kind of like specialty issues. This is something that affects all of us, I believe. and increasingly so. So these are some of actually the defining questions of our time in history. So I want to focus my remarks around one central idea, which is repetitive of what my colleagues have already said, but digital transformation in aging is not measured by access to technology. It should be measured by whether it facilitates and increases the dignity, quality of care, agency of those participants, and the social belonging in later life. So this is the core message I'd like to leave with you. I start with it. I'll come back to it. I have some things to say. So we live in a moment where there's this language of a digital transformation is everywhere, as if this is supposed to solve all of the problems. So we have digital transformation in healthcare, we have higher education, where the industry I work in, policy, government, and indeed everyday life. And so this promise sounds really familiar. That the technology will bring improvements and everyone will be happier, more free time, more efficiency, healthier, and so on, right? As if this is kind of the one pill that will solve the challenges that we all face. So to be fair, technology is genuinely valuable. I'm not this kind of person to say, oh, we should just, get rid of the digital tools can in fact help older adults and in fact many of us to stay connected across distances or to access resources, right? And so the digital technologies can help to support care and the coordination of care. It can also increase access to things like services, health information, and communication in ways that in past generations we would think of as being science fiction, right? But if we're not careful, we can start to confuse, I think, the presence of technology with as a proof of progress. However, we don't think, I think that the caution is that the presence of technology and progress are not the same thing. So we need to be very careful. So having a smartphone doesn't mean that a person has dignity. Having an app that's a health-based or a care-based app does not mean that the care reaches the person who needs it. Having a platform account like Facebook doesn't mean that a person belongs in a meaningful way. And also, access itself is not the same as agency or the ability to act on as one might choose. Okay, so this distinction is really important. Now, going back in my studies of digital divide, is that earliest studies focused on things like technical access. Do people have internet access? How fast is the access and things? And then later, we started to focus on the skills. So people can have access, but not have the skills, which is a human thing, to use those effectively. Okay, so this is like what was called the first and the second level digital divide. And this is a very similar thing that I'm talking about. Now, I want to say I'm joining you today through the technology, right? So it's facilitating this conversation. Also, I'm deeply thankful for living under a highly sophisticated air defense system in Abu Dhabi. And I do understand that there are those who are we have missile alerts and things in the last about 40 days, right? Coming in every day. We have 2 days now where there have been no missile alerts. I'm also aware of those who are without the technology and suffering, such as our brothers and sisters in places like Lebanon Palestinian areas and in Iran, who are subject to these missile attacks without this air system, right? So the technology is like actually facilitates me being here and safe, right? And this is interesting. So I'm speaking to you as a sociologist. Like I have a position in public health department and all this, but I'm a sociologist and core. And sociology teaches us clearly is that like technologies never kind of enter via an empty space, right? So technologies always enter the social world and is shaped by the institutions. So families, uh, schools, inequalities, histories, genders, relationships, social class of humanity on individual and collective levels. So when we talk about digital aging, we're not just talking about these tools, we're talking about the social conditions where these tools can either become empowering or alienating. They can be like a support to people, or they can be like kind of just neutral, or they can be humanizing potentially, or they can be dehumanizing, right? And so that's why I need to ask like this deeper question than we usually do is that like not just like how do we get technologies to older adults, but a vision about what kind of later life are we helping to create through the technologies and the application of technologies. Um, this is a long while ago. I used to work in the United States in the Department of Sociology and Gerontology. And we had a project where we studied critical wandering among elders. So one of the symptoms of dementia can be that many people like to kind of go wandering. They go kind of looking for something and then become lost. And so there's a little bit of an irony here, which is that most of the definition of a miss with dementia is defined as where their location is unknown to the caregivers, right? And so like the question is like when I was doing all this research on like what they call critical wandering, and it's mostly among elders, but there are others who are cognitively impaired who may become also lost. But this idea of the missing elder or the missing senior person, it was like actually all their perspective itself was missing from any conversation about how to deal with this problem. And this comes from a misperception of dementia. So people can live with dementia symptoms. If it's progressive in later life, for example, they can have mild dementia symptoms and be independent and functional. However, the sort of the public policy vision was like, okay, the people like kind of don't remember anything, and then they get lost and then they're completely helpless, right? But it misses this huge category of people with dementia symptoms that may actually be temporary or that may have like kind of minimal short-term memory loss. So in speaking with elders who have been lost, they say, they're aware that they're lost. They just don't know where they were supposed to go, and they don't know where they were going. And they also don't know like how to get back where they want to be, which is like home or somebody's house, a family member, things like that, right? And so this is the important question is that like, so others argued, well, the people are cognitively impaired, so, kind of like they're lost, they want to be found, and simple, right? And I was always trying to have this argument that I don't think it's quite as simple, is that to the extent that the elders with a cognitive impairment are able to speak for themselves and exercise agency, we have a responsibility as in care systems and in policy systems to allow them to express their agency to the best of their ability, right? And this is an important question, right? So I was saying like, how do we get technology to older adults isn't the question. It's like, what kind of later life would we like to create, right? Through the technologies. And as Professor Mishra said, we want one that builds agency, right? And we know, like Dr. Fulya was saying, there's like, isolation is a risk and those sorts of things, right? But we're looking at, I think, what is a global issue, not just a regional issue. It's a future issue for humanity. So this historical transformation that we're in is that, we see some societies that are further along this process of graying, right? Of the aging population, right? But and there's those who are on the vanguard, say Japan and South Korea, which have like kind of the lowest fertility rates with some of the longest life expectancies in the world. People are living longer, families are changing, the care structures are under pressure, and people increasingly use these digital systems as the solution, right? Let's put something in there. And so aging and digitization are not like someday intersectional, like it's already intersectional. So the question isn't like whether they intersect, the question is like how. So the questions of who has access, who owns a smartphone, and who can use telehealth platforms becomes extremely relevant. So these are starting points, but they're only really the beginning. Though, so other things such as technical skill really matters. But there's also, as like Professor Mishra said, this kind of emotional side to it as well, this experiential side. Do people feel confident when using those systems? Do people trust those systems? Do people feel respected when they use those systems? And do the systems support like kind of the human relationships rather than replacing them? And ultimately, the question of agency is that do the technical systems expand people's ability to act, choose, and participate? So I would like to put it this way, is that the goal is not simply digital inclusion. The goal is like kind of meaningful digital belonging, right? So it's not just like, let's get the smartphone, let's get the platform, let's get the telehealth portal into the people's vicinity, but let's get people meaningfully connected and empowered through the technologies. So this is a much higher standard, right? So the question is like, okay, we want to talk about technology and isolation, right? We want to talk about agency. We want to talk about like treating older adults as agents in their own life and not just kind of the subjects of like a social need, right? And so also ultimately it comes down to care, right? Do the technologies deepen care, or do they just sort of like become digital administration tools for caregivers to sort of tick boxes? And these are much deeper social, ethical, moral questions. And so it's where scholars like us in this virtual space play a really important role. So sociology, gerontology, kind of public health, digital society, unique way to push back on this common mistake, which is to treat digital transformation as like just technical progress, right? And so I feel like I work in a technical university. It's mostly surrounded by like engineers. And so the engineers are great problem solvers, right? But not every problem is a technical problem. Not every problem is a matter of like you know, uh, electrical engineering or mechanical engineering or even like operations management in a factory, right? It's like, like So I have a very easy, like slightly annoying role to play with my engineering colleagues, which is I always ask them when they, oh, we have the system and we're going to use this new technology. I say, yes, but are people going to use it? And they haven't even thought of it, right? They haven't even thought about it, like the human interface. And they'll say, yeah, well, we have this willingness to adopt kind of thing, measure that and things. I said, yes, but really, will people use these technologies because they're kind of forced to, that rather than going to the doctor and seeing, or the nurse and seeing the healthcare practitioner, now you have to use a portal and you have no choice? Or would they actually like kind of somehow integrate these things into their dignity, their agency, and their social belonging? So dignity is like, means that older adults are not treated as like passive recipients of the systems, right? So that are designed like others. Now, most of us in this space are what we would currently call as like digital immigrants, right? So like we migrated into this digital world and we still see the digital and the real life as being kind of separate. I know that like we will eventually age and we will pass away and there are future generations who kind of just see the digital as just part of life, right? So I firmly know that I have this distinction between like, here's my real life, like maybe you saw my cat walk across the screen, right? That's real, right? I have a cat, I touched my cat, right? And I'm not interested in having a digital cat or a robotic cat or whatever. This is my real life cat. And then there are others, I think, who live in like virtual spaces and where this kind of distinction between real life and like kind of digital is like really just kind of seamless, right? So there can be subtle forms of ageism that probably emerge as we move forward, as that, kind of older adults, like we continue to see the world as like this real world versus the digital. And then as this kind of newer generations come up and they see it as all just kind of like integrated seamlessly, they may not understand the world that the elders live in. So the voice of the elders, and I'm getting there, right, will become relevant to say like, hey, you see it as all like kind of one integrated thing. I see it as like real life versus virtual life, right? Second, about care. Like care is not just a service, it's about a relationship, right? And so the digital tools can support like kind of the delivery of care in a tick box way, but it can also create or support, I think I would call it humane ecologies or ecosystems of care. So families to stay connected across distances, and the ability of people to do like check-ins with elders, or even just to communicate, right? So, can we support people without reducing them to just like schedules or tasks or administrative tick box exercises, right? Um, I guess you all probably have had the experience where you visit a healthcare practitioner and you feel like they don't even really listen to you and they don't care, right? And so it's this idea of care is like, let's put the care back in elder care or in healthcare, right? Um, the third point is about agency. And so agency is the capacity to act, choose, and to shape one's own pathway in life. And so many of the systems that are like designed for aging are oriented around like kind of management, right? So management is something about let's manage like risk, let's manage mobility, let's manage vulnerabilities. But older adults are not just populations to be managed; they are real three-dimensional humans with histories, commitments, relationships, and their own sense of purpose and meaning. So these digital systems ultimately, I'm not sure exactly how, right? Always, I can't make, but I firmly believe that the digital systems should help people to stay involved in learning, communication, community life, and in public conversations. And then ultimately, aside from the individuals who are hermits and, kind of go off and live alone, most people have some level of desire and, in fact, need for social belonging. And this might be the most important value of them all. So Dr. Fulya speaks about loneliness, and it's not just like kind of the absence of contact with people, but it's the absence of being recognized, of being seen, remembered, and valued in one's social environment. So this idea of belonging is included in social worlds that matter. So if the digital systems don't support that, then the technologically advanced interactions might be kind of superficial, or what I would call sociologically like thin. That is, they don't really bring deeper connections. So as I was telling you, like, I live in Abu Dhabi, and 90+% of the population here is from outside of the UAE, right? And probably about 40% of the population is from Indians, mostly Keralites. But, and so so it's not just abstract to me, it's visible like in everyday life. And so I think that matters most for this audience is our scholarly goals or strategy. Okay. And so first thing is, I think we should study digital aging relationally. So, right, not just like treat the elders as the subject, right? But treat the elders in relationship with their families, with their communities, with their temples or churches or mosques, or, these meaningful communities. Second, I believe we should move beyond access metrics, this first level digital divide. It's still relevant in extremely rural and impoverished places. So India is a huge country, of course, and so there are the digitally excluded where access still is a barrier, right, to people. But in a place like UAE, for example, there's like over 100% connectivity. That is, most people have like 2 or 3 mobile phones, right? And so it's harder to, measure like how effectively people use the technologies. But we need to sort of use our skill set to find out whether people are more connected socially or less connected, whether they feel more participative or less, whether they feel more confident or less, right? And so this adoption is not the same as improvement. And then third, we build a research agenda around like humane digital futures. So Professor Mishra's, reference to this SDGs is like directly related, right? So we should help imagine what a humane digital aging could look like. This is not just science fiction. It's like kind of the future and how we can move. And the interdisciplinary and comparative work, and indeed like international or global intercultural work is important as well. So I want to close by coming back to my central message. As I started at the beginning, I said that digital transformation in aging is not measured by access but it's measured by whether it increases, it should be measured, that is, by whether it increases or deepens dignity, care, agency, and social connection, belonging in later life. So if we hold to that standard, then our questions become sharper, and I think our research becomes more meaningful, not just like, okay, these academic papers, but like kind of how do you translate that into people's lives? And then as scholars, I think it's our opportunity, but also our duty to kind of describe this humane digital transformation and to create among policymakers and maybe a larger kind of effort of public social science to guide us towards more just and caring futures for ourselves and those around us, especially for the aging population. Okay, so thank you so much. It's been my honor to be here, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. That was a very insightful discourse. May I now call upon Dr. Shiba Khalid to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you so much, Aradhna. And thank you so much, Professor Glenn, Professor Soumaya, Professor Mishra, and Professor Fulya for your informative, valuable information. So as we come to the close of this enriching and thought-provoking inaugural session, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all our speakers for their profound insights and scholarly reflections. Today's discussions have made one thing abundantly clear: the future of aging and cancer care in the digital era is not merely a technological issue. It is fundamentally a human, ethical, and sociological concern. We have explored how digital innovations are transforming healthcare systems, enhancing diagnostics, enabling remote monitoring, and expanding access to care. Yet we have also been reminded that technology, no matter how advanced, cannot substitute the essence of care rooted in empathy, dignity, presence, and human connections. Our esteemed speakers have powerfully emphasized that while digitalization offers immense opportunities, it also presents serious challenges, deepening inequalities, excluding vulnerable populations, and potentially weakening the relational and emotional dimensions of care if implemented without ethical sensitivity. So the central message emerging from this inaugural session is therefore not simply that we must adopt technology, but that we must humanize technology. We must ensure that digital transformation remains inclusive and equitable. Technological systems are designed with the needs of older adults at their core. Healthcare innovation is strengthened that rather than replaces human relationships, and sustainable development in healthcare prioritizes the social justice alongside technological progress. As scholars, practitioners, and policymakers, our responsibility extends beyond innovation. We must critically ask who benefits from digital transformation, who is left behind, and what kind of future of care are we collectively creating. That's today's symposium, served not as the conclusion of a conversation, but as the beginning of deeper interdisciplinary collaboration, critical reflection, and transformative action. I would like to express my deepest and most sincere gratitude to our esteemed chief guest, Professor Dr. Glenn Muschert, for gracing this occasion and for his invaluable presence. I extend my heartfelt thanks to our distinguished keynote speaker, Dr. Fulya Şenay, Avcı, for her insightful and thought-provoking keynote address that has truly set the tone of today's symposium. My sincere appreciation goes to our respected guests of honor, Dr. Soumaya, Abdellatif, and Professor Rajesh Mishra, sir, for their valuable presence and for enriching this platform with their wisdom and perspectives. I would like to extend my gratitude to all contributors, collaborators, and the publishers associated with the inauguration of our book also. And your efforts have made this scholarly work possible for me. And my heartfelt thanks to the organizing committee for their dedication and tireless efforts in ensuring the successful conduct of this symposium. And my special thanks to Dr. Malabika Bose ma'am and Miss Aradhana Yadav and Professor Dr. Rajiv Verma sir. And finally, I thank all the participants for joining us and contributing to this academic gathering. With this, I conclude the inaugural session. Thank you so much. And now we move ahead to the technical session. Aradhana, what do you?
Good afternoon, everyone. I warmly welcome you all to the technical session. We have a series of engaging papers today focusing on aging, caregiving, and psychosocial well-being across different contexts. Let us begin with our first presentation. Our first presenter is Dr. Rupali Rawat, who will be presenting her paper titled Social Farming and Healthy Aging, a review of European evidence and its relevance to the Indian context. I invite her to please begin the presentation.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Myself, Rupali Rawat, and the paper has been co-presented and co-written by Dr. Swati Vadva. Am I audible to everyone? Okay, thank you so much. I hope the presentation is visible to everyone. Is the presentation visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the topic of today's presentation is the social farming and healthy aging, which is a systematic review of European and Indian studies based on this concept. So myself, Rupali Rawat, I am trainee social worker. I'm pursuing Masters in Social Work from Trinity College, Dublin, Ireland. So when we talk about the growing crisis, the aging population, and the mental and social health related indicators in old age, we are reminded of the rising burden. The global crisis is that by 2050, the global population over 60 years of age is estimated to reach 347 million in India. So, the healthy systems are unprepared to serve the psychosocial dimension of aging. We are just not focusing about the cognitive decline, the physical frailty, the mobility issues, but also about the socio-emotional aspects of older populations. When we talk about social isolation, so many causal factors are there. So, the rapid urbanization is one such. We have also increasing nuclear family systems and models that is also leading to depression, anxiety, and loneliness among geriatric population. We also have a lack of green spaces due to rapid industrialization and urbanization that is also causing social isolation. The retirement, loss of loved ones, and reduced mobility, which are the developmental situations or the incidents in people, they also cut the social ties, and this exacerbates to the ever increasing cognitive decline and physical frailty among these people. A recent survey was done by HelpAge India in 2024, which found that 47% of elderly Indians feel neglected by their families, and 36% experience loneliness regularly. This is a significant number that needs due consideration and address. So, talking about the treatment plan, the cure, or the healing aspect of how we can help people provide assistance to the service users, to the population who are aging, we are primarily focused on the biomedical model in many of the contexts. So what it gets wrong about the biomedical model? The first one is that the biomedical model treats the disease, something which is not at ease, something which is not at comfort, and is not convenient to the person. It dehumanizes the identity of the older person. It also misrecognizes sometimes, and it focuses primarily on the diagnosis of the problem of the illness and focuses on the treatment as if something has been in lack of, something which has to be cured. The pharmacological interventions are focused primarily as a first resort and oftentimes are not utilized or integrated with other psychosocial approaches. So we see that the biomedical model is a fragmented, divided, and a specialist driven care which does not provide a holistic understanding of the needs of older people. There is also a neglect of social, emotional, and environmental needs. So aging is considered thus is not a disease to cure, it is a life stage, it is a developmental milestone that needs to be supported holistically. So, this topic, the social farming, is gaining a lot of popularity in many countries now. It started originally from European nations because of the standardization procedures, the government funding from various agencies. However, it is also gaining popularity in many Asian and African areas and countries. So, what is social farming? Social farming is also known as the green care or the care farming. It is an umbrella term which encompasses and involves all of the activities that use agriculture and rural resources to produce not only the food but also social services. It's a nature based solution that can connect human well being with the natural landscape and provide rural sustainability through the multiple benefits of ecosystem services. Many activities are included in social farming, such as horticulture, equestrian, which is caregiving for the horses. We have animal assisted therapy also, which is involved in social farming, as well as gardening or plant based activities. Nowadays, forestry or forest agriculture is also included now. So, the key element in social farming is that we spend time with the farmers on the farmland and with their families, with their animals, in the natural environment of the farm, while also engaging in meaningful activities which combine to deepen the impact to support recovery for our growing population. So, for the current study, the aim of the study was to examine the effectiveness of social farming on psychosocial health of older persons across Europe and its relevance in India. The research design. This study adopts a qualitative secondary research design relying on existing academic and industry literature to explore the research topic. For the study, we collected data from peer reviewed journal articles, books, and some credible online sources such as government and institutional reports, like from different CSR initiatives of different NGOs. The search strategy, since it's a secondary research design, we use some of the keywords such as aging, social farming, community work, mental well being, and elderly social care. And majority of the studies were identified which were published between 2015 and 2025. Talking about the inclusion and exclusion criteria, only peer-reviewed articles and credible reports relevant to the research topic were included, while the outdated and non-scholarly sources were excluded. Because since the topic is gaining massive popularity now, many of the studies or many of the observations or initiatives haven't been documented well in terms of the academic format. So now coming to some of the studies, how we reviewed the literature from European context. So we have some of the studies here now. Majority of the studies analyze the definitions and contexts of social farming. They examine the factors which influence the social farming outcomes and to assess the impact of social farming support centers. And then they also evaluate a social farming based mental program for older people. Majority of the studies would They also involved methodology as systematic literature review, analytical model, interviews, questionnaires. So, coming to the key findings that have been observed from the countries of intervention, some of them were Italy, Netherlands, Norway, Flanders, which is currently in Belgium, and other multi European country review studies. So, the key findings, majority, rather, I would say all of the studies contributed to the health, social inclusion, and rural development. They also talked about that social farming produced socio-economic and community benefits, that it supports mental and physical health through the farm activities, and it involved physical activity, motivation, and functional ability among older people, which shows that there is a strong evidence that social farming can improve social, emotional, physical health of elderly populations, and it highlights that there is an indirect health benefit through social engagement and integration, and thus it demonstrates a therapeutic role of social farming on vulnerable groups, including older adults and even with the people who are living with dementia, Alzheimer's, other cognitive issues. We have some more studies. So we have a farm elder project which was initiated in 2024. So the countries where this project was implemented were Ireland, Slovenia, Portugal, Germany. Then we have European Landowners Organization, Farm Elder Report, Fit Around the Farm study. So basically majority of these have been done by different NGOs, local authorities, and linked up with the government agencies. So again, the aim of these studies were to explore these social farming practices, to examine their role, analyze the challenges which are faced by the elderly populations. So they employed case studies, policy analysis, project findings, as well as qualitative interviews. And again, talking about the key findings and their relevance to the elderly health, these studies demonstrated effectiveness in reducing the loneliness, improving well-being, showing that social farming actually supports the active aging, or what we call the healthy aging or graceful aging, and dementia care. It addresses loneliness, lack of services, inactivity, and it also have improved outcome on nutrition and their social support, which supports the idea that farm environments enhance their holistic health outcomes, which is basically a shift from biomedical model to a psychosocial interventional model. Now, likewise, for social farming initiatives in India, we have reviewed some of the studies. So these are relatively recent studies if you see in India. So intervention type include the horticultural therapy group, which is basically gardening in geriatric care, horticultural therapy, or like what we call as therapeutic gardens in healthcare settings like nursing homes or hospitals or community-led mental health initiatives. Then we also have the healing gardens, or what we call as the ecotherapy sessions. So for the study design, many of the interventions involved quasi-experimental pre-post study, applied research, literature review, and talking about the mental health outcomes, we see that the gardening significantly improved their sleep, relaxation, and psychological well-being in these elderly participants. It also improved emotional stability, reduced psychological distress, and that it reduced anxiety and even the agitation, frustration among people who are struggling with different mental health issues. The nature based environments also promoted relaxation and mental restoration in elderly friendly spaces. So, due to urbanization, especially in urban areas or even in rural areas, the lack of spaces were also addressed, and they were given due spaces and acceptance into utilizing all of these programs and interventions in their own benefit. Some of the more studies from Asia, from Tamil Nadu, Bombay, Mumbai, and some of them were from Gujarat as well. So now this intervention type, the horticulture therapy, or we call as green care, again, you can observe that many of the initiatives, especially in Indian context, have largely been driven from gardening or horticultural therapy programs as opposed to other animal-assisted programs. So the mental health outcomes, it significantly reduced the depressive symptoms among people by improving quality of life, social interaction, anxiety levels were reduced, especially among people who are older than 75 age group. This improved emotional regulation, reduction in anxiety, agitation, and there was also improvement in their well-being and increased social connectedness, especially in the urban environment. So, the critical analysis. There have been many of the challenges which have been viewed in India's social farming practice and some of the lessons that we can learn from European context. The first one is the absence of a structured policy in India. We have observed that in India, social farming remains a pilot or NGO driven initiative wherein there is a lack of national framework for standardization. Thus, there is a strong need to adopt formal recognition and clear legal policy frameworks from countries like Italy and Netherlands, where the standardization is strong. The second challenge that we face right now is the weak institutional and cross sector integration. There is a poor coordination between agriculture, health, and social welfare in India. And thus, it calls for a strong integration with healthcare initiatives, the social care systems, as well as the referral pathways. So, in that sense, many NGOs and the organizations that are working locally on ground have to be linked with different health systems, public health regulatory bodies, as well as the social welfare policies in India. The third challenge that we face right now is the funding limitations. In Europe, we see that there is a stable public subsidies and welfare-linked financing mechanisms that provide strong incentives to the people working on farm as well as to the owners of the farmland who are working there with their families and supporting the people who are coming to gain access to their social farming services. So in that sense, India still relies on the CSR, the corporate social responsibility, and the NGOs within minimal dedicated government funding. So that is one thing that we need to consider. The fourth challenge is the limited research and evidence base. There is a lack of large-scale impact evaluation studies. The scalability studies are also very minimal, and we really need longitudinal studies to actually examine the effectiveness of social farming on different vulnerable groups, including the geriatric population and people struggling with mental illness as well as physical illness. In Europe, we can learn from them that there is a strong academic policy linkage with continuous monitoring and data-driven expansion. And lastly, the fifth challenge is the low capacity building and awareness. So it requires and calls for a minimal training for the farmers and extension workers in India so that they can not only support themselves, but also get linked with the institutions, with the macro systems, and then focus on the formal certification, the training programs, and providing a professional role for the social farmers. So the last conclusion, the limitations, if I talk about, so majority of the existing literature is heavily relied on the literature which has been done till 2025. However, many of the longitudinal studies might have been taking place, so they haven't been able to get documented in it, and this may introduce the selection bias and may restrict access to the most recent unpublished data. So the final recommendations, how social farming can help. The first recommendation is integration into primary care, where we prescribe social farming as a non-pharmacological intervention for depression and social isolation in geriatric care plans. The second one is building community partnerships, where we link NGOs, farms, local governments to co-design accessible, culturally appropriate programs for older adults. The third one is advocacy for policy change. We need to lobby for cross-ministerial funding schemes that recognize social farming as a public health intervention and just not a luxury. With this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you all for listening and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a very insightful presentation. We now open the floor for the questions. Moving ahead, I would like to call upon Dr. Farsana, who will be presenting her paper titled Negotiating Care, Digital Health, Faith Healing, and Psychosocial Well-Being Among Aging Muslim Women in Kerala. Ma'am, the floor is yours. Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a second. I'll just share my. So is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay. So I'm Dr. Farzana, Assistant Professor of Sociology at KIT Bhubaneswar. Today I'll be presenting my work, which is titled Negotiating Care, Digital Health, Faith Healing, and Psychosocial Well-Being Among Aging Women in Kerala. So this study emerges from my broader research interest in the intersection of health, religion, and lived experiences. And it attempts to understand how care is negotiated in a rapidly transforming healthcare landscape. So let me begin by situating this study. We are currently witnessing a new expansion of digital health technologies, ranging from teleconsultation to mobile health application, and of course, online medical platforms. So these technologies are often presented as solutions that democratize healthcare and improve accessibility. However, this narrative of progress is not uniformly experienced. So, for aging population, particularly elderly women, who access to digital healthcare is shaped by multiple constraints, such as limited digital literacy, dependence on family members, and physical limitations as well. At the same time, in culturally rich contexts like Kerala, healthcare cannot be understood just solely through the biomedical lenses. Among Muslim communities, faith based healing practices continue to play an important role, which is offering not just treatment, but which is giving meaning, comfort, and of course, social connections as well. Of course, this brings us to a critical question. How do aging women navigate between these seemingly different system of care? I'll come back to that question. And this study basically focuses on aging Muslim women in Kerala. This group is particularly significant because they are positioned at the intersection of gender, aging, and religion. While they are often perceived as passive recipient of care, the study highlights their active role in making healthcare decisions. So the research examines.
May I interrupt? Your presentation is not moving forward. You please.
Slide? Is it slide?
Yeah, it is stagnant. It's not moving forward.
No, ma'am. It's moving. So I'm just explaining the points one by one. May I continue?
Please do. Please do.
Okay. So this research, I examine how these women engage with both, like a digital healthcare system and faith-based healing as well. So importantly, the study also foregrounds psychosocial well-being, moving beyond physical health to include emotional, social, and spiritual dimensions as well. Now it's moving, I think. isn't it? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, but the slides are not changing. I think you reshare it once more. That is the
Okay.
problem.
So now this is a slide which is explaining objectives of my study. Isn't it the same you can see?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the first objective of my study to examine the health-seeking behavior of aging Muslim women, how they decide and when and where to seek healthcare. And the second one is to understand the factors influencing their therapeutic choices, including trust, accessibility, belief systems, and family dynamics as well. And the third one, which is trying to explore how digital and faith-based healing system coexist rather than replacing one another. So together, these objectives help us to move beyond simplistic binaries and understand healthcare as a negotiated and lived experiences among this Muslim women in Kerala. And for the study, basically dawns on an interdisciplinary framework. The first one, the medical sociology, it adopts the idea that health and illness are socially constructed and culturally interpreted. And of course, the anthropology of religion, which recognize the healing is deeply embedded in spiritual and ritual practices, which provides meaning and legitimacy to experience of illness. And the third one, from digital health studies, it engages with the questions of access, technological adaptation, and the digital divide. So, by bringing these perspectives together, the study offers a more holistic understanding of care. And of course, the methodological aspect. And in methodologically, the study is grounded in an ethnographic approach rather than relying on quantitative data, which is focusing on lived experiences, everyday practices, and of course, personal narratives. We cannot exclude that. Through observations and interactions, the research captures how health and illness are experienced and interpreted within specific socio-cultural context. So this approach allows us to see not just what people do, and but why they do it and what it means to them. So these are the things which I discussed in this part. And of course, let us now turn into a digital health. So here, aging women engage with digital health in several ways: teleconsultations with doctors, use of mobile health applications, accessing and medical information online. But these practices are often mediated. Many women rely on younger family members to navigate digital platforms, and moreover, issues of trust comprehensions arises there, and online information can sometimes be overwhelming or misleading as well for them, according to them. Thus, while digital health expand possibilities, it does not automatically translate to empowerment. And of course, the other side, the faith healing practices, which is also part and parcel of my topic. Alongside digital health, faith healing remains central to my paper. So these include ritual practices such as reciting Quranic verses, supplication or dua, which provides emotional solace to these people, and consultations with religious healers. So these practices are not merely symbolic, they offer a sense of control, an emotional reassurance, and of course, a moral, spiritual legitimacy as well. So, for many women, healing is incomplete without addressing the spiritual dimensions of illness. This is also another important factor which I have found from my study. And similarly, one of the key insight of this study is the concept of therapeutic pluralism. Rather than choosing between systems, women actively combine biomedical treatments, digital health services, faith-based practices as well. This is not a transitional phase from traditional to modern. Instead, it tried to reflect a stable and meaningful coexistence. And healthcare, of course, it's not linear, it's a layered, negotiated, and context dependent. Like we know it very well in that way. Similarly, the same thing which I found from the study, there are certain challenges in negotiation as well. Several critical factors shape these negotiations. The first and foremost one, I can say that trust. Trust varies across systems. Some women trust doctors, others relies on more on religious healers, and this is one of the problem or challenge they faced. And similarly, accessibility, which is digitally health requires devices, connectivity, and physical ability, which are not always available for this woman. Similarly, the digital literacy, limited familiarity with the technology, restrict them using independently the devices. And of course, moral legitimacy, faith healing is often perceived as more aligned with religious values, while digital health may appear impersonal for many. And these factors highlight that healthcare choices are not purely rational, they are deeply social and moral as well. And of course, an important contribution of this study, which is focusing on the psychosocial well-being, faith healing plays a crucial role, as I mentioned, that's which is providing providing emotional comfort and reducing anxiety and fear, strengthening social bonds, and as well. So it helps in meaning making, allowing the individuals to interpret illness within the spiritual framework. So, in that way, faith healing addresses dimensions of well being that biomedical systems often overlook. I can say that. Similarly, the central argument of this paper or the work which I have done is that healthcare practices among this aging Muslim women are best understood as processes of negotiation within a pluralistic system. So the digital and faith-based systems are not oppositional, but they intersect and overlap, and of course sometimes even reinforce one another. And importantly, I can say that aging women are not passive, they are active agents and making informed and context sensitive decisions in their family. So this challenges dominant narratives that privilege modern medicine as the ultimate or superior form of care, I can say. And of course, to conclude, the study calls for a more nuanced understanding of healthcare. It emphasized on the need for culturally sensitive healthcare system that respect diverse beliefs and recognition of multiple knowledge systems and inclusive approach to aging, and which is addressing both digital inequalities and cultural realities. Ultimately, healthcare must be understood not just as a technical system, but as a social, cultural process as well. Thank you. And now I look forward for your questions and discussions.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we will take a few questions. Moving ahead, our next presenter is Mr. Richard Amra. His paper is titled Gender Care and Inequality Exploring Family Caregiving in Ghana Through a Biopsychosocial Lens. Is Mr. Richard Amra in the meeting? Okay, sir. Moving forward, I would like to invite Ms. Ishika Agarwal, who will be presenting her paper titled Shadow Survivorship, examining the long-term psychosocial distress and unmet needs of cancer caregivers in the post-treatment phase. Ma'am, please go ahead. Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for inviting. Hi, good afternoon. I am Ishika Agarwal, second year MSc Psychology student from Surana College, Bangalore, Karnataka, India. I'll just share my screen and then we can go ahead. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Okay. Okay. So my topic is shadow survivorship, examining the long-term psychosocial distress and unmet needs of cancer caregivers in post-treatment phase. Is the slide changing?
Yes, Ishika.
Okay, great. So the complication of primary cancer treatment is widely regarded as a milestone significantly recovery and a return to normalizing. But it is, however, for caregiver, this transition often makes the beginning of a prolonged and less visible phase of psychosocial burden. This research focuses on that not only the patients of cancer, but their primary caregivers also need attention. So that's why it is being titled as unmet needs of cancer caregiver. I have termed them as shadow survivorship because along with the cancer patient, they also undergoes experiences of psychosocial strains, identity disruptions, and emotional exhaustion even after treatment ends. Unlike the actual caregiving phase, the post-treatment period is characterized by diffuse stressors such as fear, recurrence, adjustment pressures, and lack of structured support. The invisibility of caregivers' distress, coupled with societal expectations of recovery, often leads to isolation and unresolved emotional experiences. I have done multiple research reviews, finding out papers from a Google Scholar, PubMed, JSTOR, and it was identified that existing research highlights significant psychosocial, emotional, relational, and financial burdens among informal cancer caregivers. Studies indicates that high level of depression, that is 42.3%, and anxiety with 46 0.55% strongly associated with cancer caregiving burdens, duration, poor sleep, and financial strain. The dynamic link patient and caregiver distresses are reciprocally linked, confirming their psychosocial strains that they faces. It by doing multiple research reviews, I could identify gaps that there are very minimal. The literatures are focused on more of quantitative and cross-sectional study. There are very limited study that is qualitative, understanding the experiences. Focus remains on the active illness phase and intervention efficacy. So these research is a qualitative research which focuses on how cancer care given faces psychosocial distress. It was done using IPA. So the problem statement. Hello. Hello.
You're audible, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. Just a second. I think there is a glitch in my system. I'm so sorry for the disruption. Give me a moment, please. Yeah. So the problem statement states that the completion of cancer treatment is clinically framed as recovery. Yet for informal caregivers, this transition often marks the onset of shadow survivorship, a state of prolonged invisible psychosocial distress. While cancer survivorship discourse prioritize patients' quality of life, The enduring emotional exhaustion, identity disruption, and role overloaded experienced by cancer caregivers remain neglected in both research and clinical practices, leaving them to navigate a return to normal without structured support. The rationale and significance of the study. This study addresses the critical gap between clinical recovery and psychological adjustments. By conceptualizing the caregiver's journey as a distinct longitudinal phase, the research provides a framework for caregivers, inclusive survivorship feelings by identifying specific unmet needs that inform post-treatment mental health interventions, advocate for the recognition of caregivers as co-survivors within the healthcare system. The aim of the study was to explore the lived experiences, psychosocial challenges, and perceived unmet needs of informal caregiver of cancer survivors during the post-treatment phase. The objective of the study was this study aimed to explore the lived experience of psychosocial challenges and perceived unmet needs of informal caregivers of cancer survivor in the post-treatment phase. The research question was, what does shadow survivorship means in the lived experience of informal cancer caregiver? Research design was a qualitative phenomenological design using IPA, that is interpretative phenomenological analysis. Sampling was purposive sampling, which recruited 6 participants. The data was collected until saturation was attained. The criteria. Inclusion criteria were primary informal caregivers who were 18 plus years old were taken into consideration. Survivor must be at least 6 months post-active treatment who have undergone therapies like chemotherapy, radiations, or surgery. Exclusion criteria was professional paid caregivers, those providing more than 5 hours of care per week to ensure high intensity experiences. The trustworthiness and rigorous was maintained by doing investigator triangulation, where the data collected was analyzed. It was viewed by my guide, Dr. Sudarshan HL, and then we gave it to an expert for triangulation analysis validated by an independent academic expert. Reflexivity, using a bracketing and reflective journaling to manage researchers' positionality was done. Ethical safeguards, informed consent, psychodynamization, and emotional debriefing with mental health resources were provided. We also gave them certain references if they feel uncomfortable or distressed after an interview, such that their mental health is taken consideration. Data analysis, IAPA framework. The interpretative lens utilized the double hermeneutics, moving from the part where the narratives from the participants were taken to the whole, where I shared my point of view as making meaning out of it. Systematic coding transitioned through 3 levels of analysis. First one, the descriptive, literal meaning of what they mean, then linguistic, metaphorical use of language, conceptual, abstract psychological shifts, thematic synthesis, followed an ideographic to nomothetic path, clustering themes for each participant before identifying 5 cross-case superordinate themes. Rigor and validation. Again, investigator triangulation was done. Coding and clusters were audited by an independent expert to ensure data-driven are authentic. Saturation. After conducting six interviews, we could see saturation in the attained data. This is the ideographic mirror, which states that the part states the statement that were given by the participants and the whole, where I have made systematic meaning out of it, following the double hermeneutics. So certain statements given by participant 1 was physically on duty without active duties. So the meaning making was done as role internalization and dialectic of survivorship. Participant 2 made statements like caregiver mode without a mission, a purpose. It shows the ghost identity, which means a state of suspended animation where the self feels invisible without the crisis. The third participant mentioned emotional backlog, accumulated stress. It is interpreted as the survivor delayed trauma, the psychic banked stress that now demands processing. Participant 4 mentioned maintenance oriented risk management. It was interpreted as the architect using cognitive structures and logic as creative adjustment to defend against fear. Participant 5 mentioned internal chaos despite external calm. It was interpreted as shattered assumptions, a total disruption or collapse of the self concept and the belief in a safe world. Participant 6 mentioned shift towards greater authenticity and vulnerability. It was interpreted as integrative growth movement from martyrdom to mature resilience and collective self concept. This is the hermeneutic circle. The relationship was found between the part and the whole. Participant 1 meant physically on duty. Sorry. Yeah. Disproportionate worrying over guidance sentence, traumatized informed more by the perception of the world as fundamentally fragile and unpredictable. Participant 2 mentioned abrupt transition and emotional void. It was interpreted as systematic abandonment, the severance of identity when the medical system without it case. Participant 3 mentioned using reflective journaling and internalizing emotions. It means the private struggle, a response of social pressure to appear strong in front of others, lead to a solitary meaning making. Participant 4 mentioned identifying informational gaps and needs. The whole meaning making was done as the search for agency, a systematic critique where the participants seek control through knowledge to fight uncertainty. Participant 5 mentioned irritability within an intense emotional bond. The whole meaning making was done as a relational enhancement, the collapse of individual boundary due to prolonged intensity of care. Participant 6 mentioned shared recovery and family system focus. It was interpreted as systematic congruency, the move from individual isolation to a collective integrative survival narrative. The result was analyzed as finding out main 5 core themes. These are the themes. The subordinate themes were the illusion of the container, the temporal depth, systematic invisibility, the persistence of the Şenay, identity disruption versus the integration. Key sub-themes was for the participant 1, 3, and 4, structure as defense, purpose through crisis. The illustrative evidences was they mentioned that during treatment, I knew exactly what to do every hour. My interpretation was the medical routine acts as a shield, allowing the caregiver to do rather than be the trauma. Participant 3 and participant 5 mentioned the dam breaking, retrospective trauma. As they mentioned, I was a rock for 2 years and now I am crumbling over broken plate. My interpretation was suppressed emotion from the active phase demanded to be paid back once the external threat is gone. Participant 2, 5, and 6 mentioned the key sub-themes were abandonment, loss of support, and the all clear vacuum. The evidences was they mentioned once the med stops, the hospital call stopped, I just disappeared. Researchers' interpretation was the caregiver's identity was validated only by their utility to the patient. Without the illness, the self feels erased. Participant 1, 4, and 5 The sub-themes were derived as hypervigilance, inability to switch off. The evidences were I am still watching how he breathes at night, even though he's fine. Interpretation the body remains on high alert state because the internal threat detection system has no off-boarding processes. It pays a larger impact on our sympathetic nervous system. Participant 2 and 5 mention disruption, whereas participant 6 mention integration. Loss of pre-caregiving self, the new normal. They mentioned, I don't know who I am without a prescription to manage. Interpretation, a struggle for agency where one must either rebuild the self through logics or integrating the fragility. The discussion is like the story showed that patient's clinical victory as the catalyst for caregivers' internal crisis. Existing literature focuses on functional burden during active treatment. This results the shift focuses on post-treatment vacuum. We find that the medical routine serves as a psychological container, which is a shield of doing that allows caregiver to bank their terror as a temporal debt to be paid only once the crisis ends. Furthermore, the studies rebans post-treatment anxiety as a sentinel state is a trauma-informed logic where the caregiver becomes a human radar that cannot be powered down. This shifts from the task-based role to permanent identity transformation highlights a profound systematic invisibility and a broken contract with healthcare system. Ultimately, resilience is redefined not as a return to normal, but as the integration of fragility. True growth occurs when the shadow is accepted as foundation of a new moral mature necessitization of shift towards emotional continuity and recognition of caregivers as lifelong co-survivors. Conclusion. The shadow reality, the medical all clear is not the end of the crisis, but the start of internal confrontation with temporal depth. The sentinel state, post-treatment hypervigilance, is a fundamental shift in being not clinical pathological caregiver becomes human radar system sensitized to life fragility. System failure in institution abandonment creates an identity vacuum, leaving caregivers psychologically trenched to a battle the world assumed is over. Redefining resilience, recovery is not a return to normal, but the integration of fragility with the weaving the shadow into a more authentic self concept. Clinical mandate calls for emotional continuity and a formal off-boarding process that recognizes caregivers as lifelong co-survivors. Researchers' positionality. My perspective is rooted in my experience as a primary caregiver to Hodgkin's lymphoma survivor. My dad in 2021 was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. During that time, I understood the importance of psychosocial care of the caregiver itself. Academic rigors to maintain objectivity. I utilize bracketing to prioritize participants' voice over personal history, reflective measures, journaling, distinguishing personal reasons or resonance from analytical data, debriefing, regular thematic audits with a research guide. The double hermeneutics leverage personal insights to enhance interpretative depth while upholding the boundaries of creditability, qualitative inquiry. Implications. We live in a digital world. Modern health tech, such as portals or wearables, can trap caregivers in a state of permanent vigilance, turning the home into digital ward that prevents the sentinel state from powering down. Algorithm trauma. Social media algorithms often creates a digital shadow, repeating, pushing cancer-related content that force a confrontation with trauma even when the caregivers seeks to move forward. The mastery trap, the abrupt vacuum, leads caregivers to use the internet to settle their temporal debt, often resulting in cyberchondriac rather than the intent emotional relief. Needs for digital flourishing, advocacy for a shift from data heavy apps to emotional continuity platforms that focuses on identity reintegration and post traumatic growth. Digital offboarding, a call for clinical protocols to include digital hygiene advices helping caregivers transition from monitoring medical data to reclaiming their personal digital space. So, digital space can act as both positive and negative, but it depends on the user, the algorithms, and our government that what kind of rules or regulations they take out on how we can maintain digital flourishing and maintain digital hygiene to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Final thought, by acknowledging the shadow as a foundation for growth rather than a symptom to be cured, we can finally offer caregivers the emotional continuity they deserve. These are certain references. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am, for the enriching session. Now we will take the final set of questions. I would like to now call upon Dr. Shiba Khalid to take the floor.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Just because these presentations
Yes, sir.
are so so enlightening. However, I think that if there is hardly any question or any observation, then these good presentations would be killed by keeping silence. And therefore, there are some issues I would like to raise. So, very nice one. I'll begin with the last one, if you permit me, just a minute or two.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
It's a good presentation, a little psychological. So, however, the researcher has used two important, I would say, philosophical way of looking at reality. One is what she calls double hermeneutics, and the other she uses a phenomenological way of looking at reality. I mean, one is just informative question. Would she like to explain what she means by double hermeneutics when she uses as a method or as a perspective in her study? Secondly, can we study any psychosocial reality from phenomenological perspective and can conclude in a way which is more objective way of looking at, more positivist way of looking at, I would say, and giving a conclusion which is more general at the general level rather than at the specific individual level. I feel some difficulty in it. This is one observation I would like to point out. And after this, I can also point out another observation regarding the first presentation. Would you like to respond? Yes.
Yeah. Hello, sir. Good afternoon. So the first question that you asked, that using IPA, is this only the way to look at the perspective? So the answer would be no, because there are multiple qualitative research methods that we can look at, such as thematic analysis. Like when we do the interview, we can just decodes the themes, and then we can see the repetitions of it, and then we can generate codes out of it. Other one is the narrative analysis, where whatever the participant says, we'll just look at the narratives, make sense out of it, and generate it. I personally chose interpretative phenomenological approach because it itself says that first we look at the phenomenological perspective of it, that how the individual, the part and the whole. So how an individual, so when we look at the qualitative aspect of it, how an individual makes sense out of their life, out of their experiences. And when I say double hermeneutics, the part, it means that I also bring in my perspective to it. So when a client says they feel that if emotional lag or backlog is there, so how I can see it from my perspective, which means that backlog is during the treatment when the primary caregiver is continuously looking at the appointments, call, medication, treatments, and everything. They don't get the time to, look their emotions, what they are facing, because they perceive it as it is not the time to think of themselves, rather than they should pay attention to the patient. So that creates a stack of emotions and everything that they cannot process. And once the treatment ends, they start processing those emotions. And when we look at the research, all the research that has been done, we always see individuals or the papers talking about the difficulties that a cancer patient goes through. But I also have experienced the struggles, the problems, or the distress that a primary, especially the informal primary caregiver spaces, are more of neglected. Not per se neglected, but they are not being considered. So that's why I chose to use IP as a method following double hermeneutics in my study.
Thank you. It's okay. Thank you.
Professor Glenn, if you want to ask something.
Yes, thank you so much. Actually, I would congratulate the three scholars on this clear and well presented research. Each one has a different focus, and you can see the care that goes into this research, and it's inspiring. Thank you. I have a question for each one. And it doesn't have to be a very complicated answer, but the question for each of the presenters is, can you think of one example from your study of when you observed the technology was used in a very humane way by the participants? So I call on each to answer if you have, like, what's an example of humane use of technologies in community gardens, in the faith healing, and the co-survivor examples.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Good
Yes, please
afternoon,
do.
sir. Yeah. So when you talk about digital humane, being a psychology student, I can associate it with digital flourishing and also a concept from Bhagavad Gita. That is, they talk in Bhagavad Gita, they talk about the quality of personality. So they define the qualities of personality as three types. First one is sattva, second one is rajas, third one is tamas. So sattva is basically well balanced, oriented, doing their task on time. Rajas is more like energetic, doing things very rapidly, and tamas is more of having inertia, depression, living in darkness. And when it comes to digital flourishing, now if I associate with the primary caregivers, so now if we see any of these quality, the personality quality explained by the Bhagavad Gita, if a person is high on sattva, they might use their phones or their laptops or any mode of digital platforms. They will use it in the form of their learning, increasing their knowledge about cancer, what type of cancer it is, what kind of medication would help them, how they can take care of themselves, how they can take care of the patient that is having. When it comes to Rajas, they will have a moderate understanding of it. So it shows, moderate level of correlation with digital flourishing. So they will be able to manage their distress, but it won't be as high as individuals with sattva. Whereas when it comes to tamas quality, individual will have negative correlation with digital flourishing. So what they will do is when they use digital platforms, when they look at different sites or whatever mode of platform it is, they would look at the negative aspects of their parents or their the person who they are taking care of. Oh, they might die. Oh, this might affect them. Oh, this medication might have a side effect to it. So they might look it in more of negative aspect of it. So I basically try to connect it with the concept of Bhagavad Gita's personality quality with digital flourishing. So it depends on the personality of an individual, that how they use it and how they humanize it and how they apply it to their lives as well as others' life. So yeah, that was my goal. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is a very thoughtful answer. I
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. In my opinion, human use of technology means using it to support care without replacing its human essence. For example, in community gardens or social farming, technology can help coordinate participation and monitor well-being while preserving the social interaction and engagement with nature. In faith healing, digital platform can extend spiritual support without replacing community-based religious care. For cancer caregivers and post survivors, technology can provide counseling, peer support networks, and mental health resources while ensuring caregivers remain recognized and supported. So ultimately, technology should enhance connection, dignity, and care, not diminish them. So now moving ahead, thank you once again to all our esteemed experts for your illuminating presentation. We will now move into the panel discussion segment of today's symposium. So it is truly a privilege to have such distinguished scholars together on one platform to reflect collectively on the critical intersections of digital aging, cancer care, and psychosocial well-being. I would like to begin our panel discussion with broad questions to all our experts. Number one question, that is, several of you have suggested that digitalization is not merely changing how care is delivered, but transforming the very meaning of care itself. In your view, how is digital technology reshaping the ontology of care in contemporary society? So may I first invite Professor Glenn to begin, and followed by Professor Fulya, Professor Mishra, and Professor Abdellatif.
Oh, sorry, I'm on the spot at the first. So can you just repeat the basic question?
My question is that, Professor Glenn, that several of us, of you have suggested that digitalization is not merely changing how care is delivered, so but transforming the very meaning of care itself. In your view, how is digital technology reshaping the ontology of care in contemporary society?
Well, I think my main point, which is not really a novel point, is that the technology becomes a stopgap for the stresses that are put on the uh, traditional institutions of care for elders. These are families, these are communities and such, and that unfortunately, I am in a Department of Public Health, all right? So I'm teaching like the social determinants of health to these public health, but most of the interventions are occurring on the individual level, this proximate level. And so the technology tends to go into those levels. And what's totally missing is probably because it's like A, too complicated, but B, vested interests are involved. What's missing is a sociological conversation about how the care has become threatened due to the push for efficiency and innovation and such. Um, my public health, it's not popular, but I come in and I tell my students that my grandmother, and God bless her, she was born in 1911, and she had only education to 8th grade. But she could basically tell you how to live a healthy life. Eat healthy foods, not too much of it, get some activity, spend time with your family, work, but don't work too hard, pray. If you drink, don't drink too much, don't smoke, all of these kinds of things. And then I'm here in a Department of Public Health where it's like, oh, we're going to work on precision medicine and everybody needs to have a full body MRI and, genetics and epigenetics and multi-omics and things. And I'm thinking like, I've been to time after time, I've been to these symposiums, this one, but like organized by who's just spent their whole day at this symposium, probably goes home and orders fast food, right? And so it's like, why is it that to have time to care for one's family members, including like home cooked food, is a luxury, right? I mean, these are the sociological things that, they can talk about like, oh, I need to, have some, well, thank God there's like if you get some sort of rare cancer, thank God they have some treatment for it, right? But like in all seriousness, if you allowed people to have like a less stressful lifestyle and to have the freedom of time to care for their children, to care for their elders, to cook for themselves and things, the benefit would be much greater. But unfortunately, that's unlikely to happen because of this, capitalism. But again, it's a big Gordian knot that it's not easy to untangle. So therefore, the people who want to do something will always do it on this proximal level of like, okay, let's give them, some stopgap to, but classic works in public health or medical sociology, like Lincoln Phelan, who basically said that despite the history of all of these interventions, people aren't living longer that, much people are having like, long periods of like chronic disease, and we're not solving the underlying sociological causes of illness and disease. Anyway, thank you for the question.
Thank you so much, Professor Glenn.
Yes.
Professor Mishra, yeah, Professor Soumaya, please.
Thank you, Dr. Shiba, and thank you, Professor Glenn, for these further points to rethink the reshaping of care in contemporary societies. From my point of view, I think that digitalization is now separating the physical presence from the nature of care, from the meaning, from the ontology of care. It reconstitutes care through interfaces, the data flows, and protocols. So, in this way, it transforms care from the ethic of relation to a logic of coordination and control. So this is why we should focus on how the digitalization of care cannot lead to, let's say, will not erode the relational aspect of care.
Thank you so much, Professor Mayer. Professor Fulya. Professor Mishra, if you want to say something, yeah, please.
So, as I understand, you asked a question on the ontological aspect of this issue. So, let me begin with this clarification that by ontological aspect, I would understand the nature of the reality of what we are talking about. So as I presented also, there are three aspects of it. One aspect is about, because it's an issue of digital aging and digital care. So one aspect is, I think, is some kind of disparity. Of course, I'm a student of inequality, so I would focus on that. This disparity aspect, the inequality aspect, is one aspect that is the important aspect of digital aging and digital care, and any disease, cancer, to be very specific. By the way, I also lost my mother long ago because of cancer. And it was a cancer of uterus at a very early age. She was 45. So I'm situating this to that experience which I felt at that time. It was early 80s, 1980s I'm talking about, 45 years ago. Even a little more. Then, though we were educated family, my father was also educated, but even then, the informations about cancer and for women, particularly cancer, uterus cancer, could not be there with my mother. So she was not so though she was educated, but not informed about it. And that is how the cancer reached at the third stage without being even known to the family members. So, that is what I'm talking about, some kind of inequalities, maybe a gender inequality, maybe other kinds of disparities, other kinds of limitations. This is one aspect of this. Nowadays, it may be in different dimensions. This is one. The second is I feel that there is an issue of privacy also involved in this today's world. Particularly in today's world, is as we live in a digital world, and a lot of data is produced and there through also digital world, and we know so many cases often of data misuse, where health data, digital footprints, and also intimate histories they become public, and these not only public but also these issues of discussions and debates. So that become also very important, is an ontological issue involved in this kind of word. And the third, I would like to point out that the third word is what I emphasize, the participation aspect, the agency aspect. I mean, as I mentioned that I mean, digital aging with digital citizenship would imply, and technologies are designed in such a way that even they are deployed in such a way that older people are excluded. I mean, that is, I know this is maybe a very subjective opinion, but this subjectivity is also should taken care of, that the technologies of digital world should also be some kind of participating, inviting, I would say, that participate. I mean, these three aspects are important. Ontological aspect should be given attention, should be pondered over to unmask the reality of behind it. That is my observation at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Mishra. Professor Fulya, if you want to add something.
Thank you. Across countries, the intersection of aging, digitalizations, and care reveals a new axis of inequality. Older adults are stratified not only by income or health status, but increasingly by their access to and literacy in digital technologies. In these emergence landscapes, digital inclusions became a key determinant of social participations, autonomy, and dignity in later life. While some nations leverage smart care systems and telehealth to enhance well-being, other risks depending isolation, leaving aging populations at emergence of rapidly digitalized societies. Ultimately, the question is no longer whether societies can digitalize care, but whether they can do so without eroding the social, relational, and ethical foundation of aging. Technologies should be integrated into human cancer care models in ways that preserve social interactions, empathy, and ethical standards. Age-sensitive digital infrastructures should be developed, taken into account the physical, cognitive, and sensory difference among older adults. Lifelong learning systems should be promoted to continuously support older individuals' adaptation to evolving technologies. Co-design approaches should be encouraged enabling older adults to actively participate in the development of digital care tools and the platform. Regional and socioeconomic inequalities should be reduced through equitable investment in digital health and care service. A strong ethical and legal framework should be established to safeguard privacy, data security, and the autonomy and digital mediated care. Interdisciplinary collaboration should be fostered among policymakers, sociologists, technologists, and healthcare professionals to ensure inclusive digital aging strategy. Maybe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Fulya. Thank you to all our distinguished panelists for such a rich and intellectually stimulating discussion. Today's conversation has demonstrated that the future of digital aging and healthcare cannot be shaped by technology alone. So it must be guided by ethics, inclusion, human dignity, and social responsibility. Now over to Dr. Malavika Bose.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to present the brief summary report on the Symposium on Reimagining Care in the Digital Age. A brief overview of the event. The symposium explored the intersections of digital technologies, aging, cancer care, and psychosocial well-being. Speakers and presenters critically examined how digitalization transforms care practices while raising concerns about human connection, inequalities, ethics, and inclusion. The event featured keynote addresses, guest lectures, and paper presentations, emphasizing a human-centered ethical approach to technological change in healthcare. The inaugural session was highlighted by Professor Dr. Fulya. She highlighted that healthcare is profoundly human, ethical, and relational practice. She questioned whether digital systems can address the emotional and relational dimensions of care, or if they risk making care more efficient but less human. She warned of digital exclusion due to literacy, economic, and privacy issues. The paradox of connectivity leading to greater loneliness and the need to care to center human dignity, care around human dignity in sustainable healthcare. The key question was, how do we adapt technology to human needs rather than vice versa? Dr. Soumaya reflected sociologically on the transformation of care, emphasizing that care is a social relationship rooted in presence and emotional bonds, referencing her Professor Pascal Hintermeyer's experience with his mother. She discussed cultural perceptions of cancer, especially in Maghreb context, as a nameless disease, potential exclusion through reduced human interaction, and the importance of preserving family intergenerational solidarity in Arab societies while integrating technology without weakening the social bonds. Professor Rajesh Mishra focused on inequalities in digital health and digital citizenship in later life. He linked the theme to SDGs 3, that is good health, 10, reduce inequalities, and 11, sustainable communities. He stressed that digital tools, telemedicine, AI diagnostics can deepen existing inequalities in India due to access barriers, that is device, data, literacy, design flaws not suited for older, rural, and poor populations, and the emotional costs associated with it. He advocated for rights, agency, and participation of older adults as digital citizens, calling for age-friendly designs, digital literacy, and inclusive policies. Finally, our chief guest, Professor Glenn, argued that digital transformation in aging should be measured not by access to technology, but by whether it enhances dignity, quality of care, agency, and social belonging. He cautioned against equating technological presence with progress, distinguishing access from meaningful use of agency and highlighting relational aspects of care. He shared insights from dementia research, critical wandering, that is, and emphasized building humane digital futures through relational interdisciplinary research that supports meaningful belonging rather than thin or technical interactions. Next, we begin with the technical session paper presentations. Dr. Rupali Rawat, along with Dr. Swati Bhadwa, presented the paper titled Social Farming and Healthy Aging, a review of European evidence and its relevance to the Indian context. She presented that social farming or green care or care farming as a nature-based holistic alternative to biomedical model. European studies showed benefits in reducing loneliness, improving physical mental health, social inclusion, and active aging, including that for dementia patients. In India, initiatives are mostly horticultural therapy, gardening, showing positive effects on well-being and reduced depression and anxiety among patients. Challenges in India were lack of policy framework, funding, integration, research, and training. The recommendations of the paper were to integrate primary care, build partnerships, and advocate for policy support. Dr. Farzana presented a paper negotiating care, digital health, faith healing, and psychosocial well-being among aging Muslim women in Kerala. This was an ethnographic study exploring how aging Muslim women in Kerala navigate digital health through teleconsultation apps. Alongside faith healing, that is Quranic recitations, dua, religious healers, etc., all come together to help in the healing process. She highlighted therapeutic pluralism among the women who actively combine systems rather than choosing one. The key factors in this system were trust, accessibility, digital literacy, moral religious legitimacy, etc. Faith healing supports emotional and spiritual well-being, which is often overlooked by biomedicine. Women are active agents in negotiate and very well negotiated the culturally embedded care. Finally, Ms. Ishika Agarwal presented the paper titled Shadow Survivorship, examining the long-term psychosocial distress and the unmet needs of cancer caregivers in post-treatment phase. This paper focused on informal cancer caregivers as shadow survivors who experience prolonged psychosocial burden, identity disruption, and emotional exhaustion even after patient treatment ends. It emphasized that caregivers' needs are more often invisible and unmet. The completion of the active cancer treatment is often viewed clinically as the point of recovery for the patient. However, for informal family and unpaid caregivers, this transition frequently marks the beginning of shadow survivorship, a prolonged, invisible phase of psychosocial distress. While cancer survivorship research and services heavily focus on patients, quality of life of caregivers, experiences of emotional exhaustion, identity disruption, role overload, and difficulty to returning to normal life often remain largely neglected in both research and clinical practice. This study addresses this critical gap by conceptualizing caregivers as co-survivors and highlighting the need for inclusive, caregiver-focused post-treatment support. The overall themes and takeaways of the symposium are human-centered care, that is, technology should support, not replace, empathy, touch, presence, and relational bonds. Inequalities and inclusion, that is, digital tools risk exacerbating the divides based on age, gender, class, rural or urban location, and digital literacy. Next, ethical and social lens. Care is a relational and culturally embedded sustainable development and must prioritize dignity and agency along with belongingness. Pluralistic sociological lens. Care is relational and culturally embedded, sustainable development must prioritize dignity, agency, pluralistic approaches, integration of digital and biomedical, nature-based social farming, and faith-based practices for holistic socio-social, psychosocial well-being. The call for action now stands at interdisciplinary collaboration, policy development, age-friendly design, digital literacy, and critical reflection to build inclusive, humane digital futures for aging populations. Thus, the symposium successfully blended the global perspectives from Europe, UAE, India, Arab contexts, Ghana, and local realities, urging participants to ensure technological progress that serves human needs and social justice. Thank you. That's all from my side. I now request Dr. Shiba Khalid to deliver the vote of thanks and conclude the event.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malvika Bose. And before concluding this symposium, I'd like to request Mr. Richard. He has joined us lately because of some technical problem. So I request, he is from Ghana, and I request him to kindly, if he wants to add something from his side. Kindly unmute yourself, Mr. Armo.
Okay, please, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Richard Ama, from Ghana, and I'm representing on the title Gender Care and Inequality, Exploring Family Caregiving in Ghana through a Psychosocial lens. And family caregiving remains family care in Ghana. We often say family is the first hospital, but what happens that families are overstructured and unequal in how care is provided. And also family caregiving remains the backbone of the healthcare support in Ghana, especially for the elderly and chronically ill. However, due to urbanization, migration, and changing family structures, these traditional systems are under serious pressure. These studies focus on how caregiving is experienced and who is most affected, and what gap exists in support system. The main aim of this study is to explore caregiving experience in Ghana using an intersectional and psychosocial perspective. Specifically, I examine gender roles, economic burden, psychological stress, and the available of support system. And also looking at the methodology aspects, this study uses a qualitative design based on the thematic analysis of secondary data. And while the data was collected from journal articles, policy reports, and social narrative between 2000 and 2024. The analysis followed Bryan and Clark's six-step thematic approach. And at the end of this study, the results are showing 4 points. That's number one, gendered caregiving. First, caregiving in Ghana is highly gendered. That's women, especially the daughters, carry most of the responsibility. Here in Ghana, we mostly find women as most caregivers to the ill ones. And also moving to economic burden, caregivers face serious financial strain due to medical costs, loss of income, and lack of compensation. There's over 75% of caregivers reports financial stress, that they do not have enough income, compensation, and other health benefits whilst supporting the ill. We're looking at the psychological and social stress. Caregiving leads to emotional stress and social isolation and reduced productivity. This is especially severe in urban settings where social support systems are weaker. Yeah, there are too many people in social support center or a hospital. Okay, then moving on to the support system gaps. Finally, there are gaps in formal support system. Government policies, financial aid, and community programs are largely inefficient. Most caregivers rely on informal support such as family and religion. Thus, they do rely on them for charity, donation, or some allowances to their role in the support giving. Okay. This findings shows that caregiving is not just a family issue, but it's a structure and social inequality issue. Gender, class, and location all shape how caregiving is experienced. What I want to conclude and the recommendation that I would like to give is, while caregiving promotes family solidarity and moral fulfillment, it also place a heavy burden, especially on women. That's in Ghana here. Women are mostly found in that position. What I recommend is for it to be addressed is the stronger government policies for caregiving. That's much supports, much benefits to women and also to caregivers, to give them compensation, income, and also some health benefits. Also financial and social support system, community-based programs that in the community, such as the NGOs, non-government organizations, to also support, be in shoes with in the caregivers. Integration of digital health solution is also a must. Ultimately, strengthen formal and informal caregiving system is essential for achieving health equity and sustainable development in Ghana. And I would like to share my paper.
This is my request, Richard. Can you please conclude this time, because we have professors and they have other commitments. So now we need to conclude the program.
Okay. Okay, so for me to conclude, I suggest that we should always put more support in the caregiver system, that's informal and formal system. That's most responsibility has to come from the government here to support us, and also the families of the ill ones who are the who patients are overtaken by people. They have to be also conscious and also to play a role to support these caregivers. That's what I want to conclude, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Richard. And
Okay.
today's symposium serve not as the conclusion of a conversation, but as the beginning of deeper interdisciplinary collaboration, critical reflection, and transformative action. I would like to express my deepest and most sincere gratitude to our esteemed chief guest, Professor Dr. Glenn Muschert, for gracing this occasion and for this invaluable presence. I extend my heartfelt thanks to our distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Fulya Şenay Avcı, for her insightful and thought-provoking keynote address, and has truly set the tone for today's symposium. My sincere appreciation goes to our respected guest of honor, Professor Dr. Soumaya Abdellatif and Professor Dr. Rajesh Mishra sir, for their valuable presence and for enriching this platform with their wisdom and perspectives. I would also like to extend my gratitude to all contributors, collaborators, and the publisher associated with the inauguration of our book. the efforts have made this scholarly work possible for me. And my heartfelt thanks to my organizing committee, Dr. Malvika Bose, Ms. Aradhana Yadav, and Dr. Rajiv Verma sir, for their dedication and tireless efforts to ensuring the successful conduct of this symposium. And finally, I thank all the participants for joining us and contributing this academic gathering. With this, I conclude this session. Thank you so much.
All right, you are welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
God
you
bless.
too.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Bye. Take care.
I was facing technical problems, so I didn't able to
Thank you,
join
everyone.
earlier.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a
Okay,
great,
all right.
great pleasure for me. Thank you so much.
Okay, so